Hey guys, I want to thank you for all the positive responses and all the views we've gotten, but we got to keep this rolling. This is my Lost Thoughts for episode 3 entitled Jughead. We're going to be talking some Latin, figure out why the name Eloise is important, blush at Daniel's confession, and get a mind-blowing new theory. Stay tuned. This week's episode was okay. It's just that I expect the best out of Lost, and when I get a great episode compared to a mind-bending episode, I always end up a little disappointed. Silly James. I just wanted to point out that if you saw the repeat episode of The Lie before Jughead, the episode where you have the little pop-up statements at the bottom, it confirmed that Miss Hawking, her first name, is Eloise. We start with Penny giving birth, which is very interesting considering the magnitude of births that we've seen on this show. Think back to Locke, Ben, Aaron, and to a lesser extent Ji-yeon. But if you see a birth on the show, that kid is going to be important. Man, people are dying right off the bat in this episode. Last week, I said that the people who ambushed Sawyer and Juliet were Dharma. I was wrong. Is this a girl that we've met before? Are we supposed to know who the heck she is? These are all the thoughts going through my head when we first see her. So eventually, we find out her name is Ellie. I did some research, and of course, Ellie is a variant name of Eloise. Daniel said that Ellie looks like someone he's met before. Could Ellie be his mother? So ladies and gentlemen, that is the news that is out there right now. People were theorizing that Miss Hawking was Daniel's mother. We see a woman on the island named Ellie, which is short for Eloise, which is Miss Hawking's first name. Connect the dots. Last week, I said it couldn't be possible that Miss Hawking was Daniel's mother because Daniel sent Desmond to Oxford, and Miss Hawking was in Los Angeles. Lo and behold, what happens when Desmond goes to Charles Widmore? He says that she is in Los Angeles. This whole lead up to the reveal that Miss Hawking is actually Daniel's mother is just, it's painfully obvious. Penny actually asked the question that I asked last week. Why did Desmond finally get that memory at that point in time and not earlier after they got off the island? So Juliet knew that they were others based on the fact that they spoke Latin. Latin is the language of the enlightened. Apparently on the island, every other has to take a semester of Latin. At least it's better than taking 8 years of dance just to be in the Jets. Did any of them happen to mention what year it is? I had all of these elaborate theories as to why Oxford had no record of Daniel. Parallel universe. Daniel time-traveled himself out of existence. Aliens. Four-toed FBI agents. Daniel's real name is Oliver Hanzo. But no, Oxford just erased his records. Did Daniel know that it was a hydrogen bomb based on a previous memory? Or was it just because he saw that the guy's hands were burned? Wouldn't it be awesome if a recovered memory came into play just like Desmond? So we're assuming that Daniel is in love. How many people just went, "Aww"? I did. I'm a softie, so sue me. Why does Richard always look like he's wearing mascara? Okay, when the other broke that other guy's neck, that was hardcore. The real challenge is to break someone's neck with your legs. Teresa Spencer. Never heard of her. Charles Widmore is Daniel's benefactor. Benefactor, we get that from the Latin phrase. Translated, it basically means good maker. But the question remains, how much of Charles Widmore does Daniel actually know about? Why is Charles Widmore interested in Daniel's experiments about time travel? Well, you better see my theory of the week. Sodden old man? That was hilarious. He has no idea who this sodden old man named Locke actually is. How old is Richard? Old is not an answer, Juliet. With Jughead being the name of the bomb, that was actually kind of lame, but it leads to some good discussion. Why Jughead? Okay, and the huge news of this episode? Charles Widmore used to be an other. Holy crap. Penny says to Desmond, "We're going with you." Like, she'll always follow him. Even to the island? Locke giving Richard all that information about his birth, that was awesome. I mean, come on, that's how Richard knew to be there when Locke was born. But then my question is, what is with the whole Dalai Lama testing thing that Richard pulled on Locke? Locke chose the compass as a kid. He chose that vial of sand or dust or whatever the heck that stuff is. And then he chose the knife, and Richard got mad. Why? And we end this episode with Charlotte losing it. I'm telling you, last season, I would have loved it. This season, I'm actually feeling some compassion for her. So, the thought is that Charlotte can't die until we find out what her connection to the island is, but with this show, who the heck knows? And now it's time for Message Board Chatter. A lot of people are wondering why Daniel Day Kim, aka Jin, why his name is appearing in the credits for these episodes. I think it's pretty easy to predict that at this point, Jin is going to show up either in a time jump or something. Everybody on the message board is making predictions as to who is related to who. Obviously, they're asking which character is Daniel's mother. Who is Penny's mom? How does baby Charlie fit into all this? How do you factor in Aaron? And do Daniel and Charlotte actually have a relation that we don't know about yet? So this is my question of the day for you. Who is related to who and why? Leave your comments below. Next week, I'll mention my favorites. Right now, my favorite who is related to who brings us to Theory of the Week. This theory was actually posted by Professor Stotch on docarts.com. I've added a little bit of my own flavor to it, but you'll see. To understand this theory, you also have to be a subscriber in the time loop theory, which is that everything that happens has happened before and they're just going over it again and again and again. Now, before this episode, I had an explanation as to why Desmond and Penny would have named their kid Charlie. But this episode gave his name away, so all it really does is save me time. It really is a great tribute to a man who sacrificed his life, Mr. Charlie Pace. The rest of the theory is based on total conjecture. Let's pretend that Desmond, Penny, and little Charlie make it back to the island through the whole everybody has to go back bit. Once Desmond and family and the Oceanic Six and whoever the heck else needs to go back, the time jumps we assume will stop. Through a series of events, the island is threatened again and has to move. And this time, Desmond is convinced that he's the one that has to do it. So he moves the island, and in accordance with island rules, he can never return. Little Charlie believes that Desmond abandoned his family, much like Desmond abandoned Penny earlier in his life, thinking that Desmond is a coward. Eventually, in the course of his life, little Charlie assimilates himself to be one of the others. He wants nothing to do with his father, Desmond Hume, and decides to take his mother's maiden name. Furthermore, he thinks that Charlie is a kid's name and wants to appear more grown up. So here we are. Charlie Hume becomes Charles Widmore. Now, through a series of events, Charles Widmore becomes a very prominent man on the island. And thanks to time-traveling bunnies, he is sent back to a time much earlier than where we are. In the real world, he eventually founds Widmore Industries. He eventually has a daughter who he names after his mother, Penny. Now, the reason why Charles Widmore would have such a problem with Desmond, who was actually his father, is for one of two reasons. One, he honestly thinks Desmond is a coward and wants to keep him away from Penny at all costs, or, because of the time loop theory, he does it because he knows that if he does, it'll eventually send Desmond to the island, setting forth all of these events. So there you go. Charles Widmore is his own grandfather. Now, do I believe it? Probably not. I just think that it's hilarious when you consider the possibility of time travel and the time loop theory. Next week's episode is The Little Prince. Who is the Little Prince? My money's on Aaron. But be on the lookout for a young Danielle Rousseau. The producers have promised us to get the backstory on Danielle. Time travel allows it to happen. Until next week, subscribe. Send this video to a friend. If you don't, I'll punch you in the tooth.